everybody, and welcome to the OHIO podcast. That's right, the guy on this side of the screen today, being your host, the Wild Man, Chris Wilds. I am joined by Eric, who's taken a one-day demotion to co-host, and Mr. Buckeye Boggs. We got a very interesting topic today, one that was brought up in our chat on our show this past weekend, our live show, and one that we really wanted to dive into a little bit. Now, I wish I could remember who it was that said this, but man, they deserve a lot of credit because this popped some thought into our heads. Ryan Day, as critical as I've been, I cannot deny the fact that the man is a great coach. He just proved that by making the most historic run in college football history. One of the things that you've thrown out there a lot is the fact that Jim Tressel has really had his thumbprint kind of on this team a little bit. But the person in the chat had mentioned Ryan Day is not built for Tressel Ball. And I got thinking to myself, man, that's a great point. That's a
It
beautiful
it
point.
really is, and I think in order for us to really dive deep into this, I think it's important that we create a baseline and understanding and defining what is trestle ball because I want to make sure that you're on the same wavelength as me when people say trestle ball, what do you think they mean?
I think we talk run heavy offense. I think we talk stout defense. And more importantly, I think we talk about a philosophy where special teams is almost as important as anything in the game. Jim Tressel, if there's one thing he did great, it was very strategic use of special teams. Specifically, the way that he would play conservative and then flip the field into his team's advantage. He was not ultra aggressive on offense. He leaned on the run. He passed when he had to or when the time was opportune. But more than anything, Jim Tressel, I think his teams were really just known for stout defense and tremendous special teams play.
Mhm.
To me, that is Tressel ball.
Yeah, so when someone says trestle ball to me, I think field position, right?
Yes.
Winning field position and leaning heavy on a great defense. Um, Winning 17-14, 24-21, right? Now, in 2006, Tressel did it with by leashing Troy Smith on the world in the
Right.
passing department, but it was a lot of, like you said, run heavy, play, time, running the clock, field position, and then yes, using special teams as a weapon.
Yeah. So we think about that as it pertains to Ryan Day during his tenure here and during this year. Now we saw a tremendous defense this year. A defense that, in all honesty, probably could be said won us some games. Something that I would say is very reminiscent of Jim Tressel. But Eric, when I think about Ryan Day, I think about offensive firepower. That is what we have known from Ryan Day, I think, since he got here, is explosiveness, is quarterback play, tremendous quarterback play, and not so much running the quarterback as we saw with Urban or with Tress, uh, but setting back, picking defenses apart with the pass, using the pass to open the run. I think he's been baited at times into trying to play a different type of ball. We saw that versus Michigan,
Mhm.
and I think that's a great example there of why he's not a master of trestle ball. He needs to have his wide open offense. Yes, he has special teams as a part of the game, but I would say as it ranks on this team, special teams is definitely at the bottom of the ladder. Um, we were not all about flipping the field. This is a guy who, if it's 4th and 2, 4th and 3, and we're in the right spot of the field, he's going for it. He's not going to punt that ball. I can remember times where we were on our side of the field, or we're driving rather, we get to the opponent's side of the field, and we might be at the 40, 45 yard line. Where if it was 4th and 2, 4th and 3, Jim Tressel is going to try to coffin corner punt that thing.
Right.
Ryan Day is going to go for it
Mm-hmm.
because that is his mentality. He is an aggressive coach that I think at times we got critical on him for being too tight. And I think what that was trying to fit himself into another box. But he doesn't have that special teams unit or that emphasis on special teams or that special teams coaching that Jim Tressel had.
He's
Jim
wired.
Tressel, what's that?
He's wired differently.
He's wired differently. He is an offensive guy. And I think we really saw when he focuses his talents on that whole team mentality, like we saw this year, where he lets Chip run the offense, but he's still got a hand in that offense. But where he lets Chip run the offense, where he lets Knowles run that defense, because I think Ryan Day's fingerprints were not on that defense. I think Ryan Day addressed the defense one time, and that's when he had to address an issue between coaches, where he had to say, listen, you two get this crap together.
Yeah.
Other than that, his emphasis is not on defense. And by God, we know it's not on special teams. I don't know that there's anybody on the team that's got an emphasis on special teams. Whereas that was Jim Tressel's bread and butter. And
Right.
in a lot of ways, it was Urban's bread and
Yeah.
butter at
Yeah.
times.
Because the urban with the kickoff kind of,
Yes.
they kind of changed the rules in college football on kickoff because of urban.
Yes.
So, um, no, I agree with you with your assessment of the differences between Jim Tressel and Ryan Day from an offensive um, philosophy standpoint. I think that Jim Tressel comes from the old school. His dad was a football coach at Baldwin Wallace, and kind of comes from that old school, grind it out. We're gonna use the running game to open the pass, and um, we're gonna use special teams as a weapon, and we're just gonna absolutely just suffocate you with defense, right?
Yes.
Where Ryan Day comes from the coaching tree of one Chip Kelly.
Which is I'm going to outscore you, and we're going to play defense
Yeah.
just good enough to hold you off.
One says we're comfortable winning 17-14. The other one says we're comfortable winning 42-38 or
Right.
whatever. So, um, yeah, I think Ryan Day has tried to marry those two this season. If you look at the approach that Jim Knowles took and his approach into giving Jim Knowles complete reign of the defense in 2024, you mentioned Ohio State defensively won a couple games. I can think of two right off the bat. Uh, the win
Nebraska.
against Penn State, and the other one in my head was Texas and the CFP. But
Definitely.
yeah, you just brought up Nebraska. That was very much a defense holding on for dear life game victory right there. So, um, yeah. So what do you think the why do you think if Day needs to try to win a game, low scoring game, do you think he's just uncomfortable at that, or do you think like what? Because the comment was Day isn't built for Tressel Ball, but
Right.
and that was it really jumped out at both of us. So why do you think that is?
I think Day offensively is an innovator. He is a guy who likes explosive offense. He's a guy who likes to create. And if you're in one of those tight games and he's trying to, whether it's maintained by just running out the clock, whether it's trying to play tough football, uh, I think he feels uncomfortable with that because it takes away a huge chunk of what he knows how to do. Let's remember, Ryan Day ultimately, he was a quarterback. He likes to throw the ball around. He likes to have those options to where
So is Jim
I can
Tressel,
run the
though, by the
ball, I
way.
can throw, I know. But Ryan Day likes to say, I can throw the ball, I can run the ball. I've got this huge playbook that's 400 plays long. But when I'm in this tight little game, I have to go into this little playbook that's 10 to 15 pages long. We can't be as creative. We can't make that we can't make that critical mistake. I think is what he thinks. He's afraid, and I've said this often that when he gets in these tight games, he plays the game or coaches the game not to win, but rather he coaches not to lose. I think he is afraid of making that critical mistake.
I think you're right, but at the same time, let me push back on you a
Sure,
little bit. I think Ryan Day is learning how to be more comfortable in a low scoring game.
I agree with that.
And it's not something that is necessarily in his DNA, but it's something that he's trying to allow to become a part of who he is. And maybe that's through the conversations and the mentorship he has now in Jim Tressel, possibly.
Yeah,
I mean, really, this would be a great question to ask Jim. What conversations, and of course, he would never let us know, but
of course
what
not.
what questions have you and Ryan Day had, or what conversations have you and Ryan Day had about, your experience in coaching in those games, and what has Ryan Day gleaned from that? Because when Ryan Day is uber aggressive and he has his foot on the gas, or what we have been known to call angry Ryan Day, I think the team just responds better to him.
Yeah. Well, and this thought too. Just let's think about this for a second. You talked about the fact that Tressel and even Urban are kind of that old school mentality. Run the ball, run the ball. Even Urban with his quarterbacks ran the ball. Ryan Day played quarterback in college in 1998, 1998 to 2001. That's about the time that I think offenses really changed over from. You saw it starting to happen in the early 90s, but I think it progressed to the late 90s, where the passing game was so much more integral than it was just 8 to 10 years before that,
Oh yeah, the
where we
spread
were still
offense
playing
was
that
being
old school
developed.
running.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. The West Coast offense was becoming the spread offense, which was becoming,
yes,
the run and
yeah.
shoot.
We saw that West Coast, of course, made famous by the coach there for the 49ers for
Hmm.
years, um,
Yeah, Sam,
Bill.
Bill Walsh.
No, Bill Walsh. Thank you, Bill Walsh, and that was big in the late 80s, and we started to see that transition come to college in the early to mid 90s. But by 98, I think 98 was about the point that the spread offense was in full effect. This is what Ryan Day knows: open, explosive offense. I think that's a comfort zone for him.
Yeah, and if you're going to win playing Tressel Ball, that 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 hampers your ability to do that.
Right.
So it's an interesting dynamic when you realize that Day at times looks like he's trying to fit a square block in a round hole.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, the Michigan game is the most glaring example of that. When you are allowing the other team to dictate what you do offensively because of what either a perceived lack of toughness or in this case, which we will go back and we will explore this later on, obviously, because what really happened in that game, there's a lot of theories with that, and I think as more and more information becomes available now that the season's over, what truly happened there with Will Howard and how that changed the offensive game plan, and was there this mindset of we're already in? Do we want to kind of take our foot off the gas, maybe, especially if Will's banged up and we can't win the playoffs if we don't have Will? And so there's this, but we have to play him because if we're going to win, we have that's the only chance we got at winning. Like there's a whole ball of wax there that that needs to be peeled back and explored, especially getting ready and going into next season and playing that game out again. in the future in their house, mind you, with a brand new quarterback. But I digress because I think I think what's become evident in this, Chris, is that Ryan Day's not built to win that way. And a lot of people, yourself included, I think Corey, even myself, and some of the people who've watched our podcasts and come to the live shows and comment and things, going into the playoffs, we said just lean into who you are. And they did
Yes.
that against Tennessee. Despite the temperature, despite the cold, despite the weather, they opened up the playbook, they opened up the offense, and Tennessee couldn't hang with your weapons because you were willing to let it all hang out and just go guns a blazing, balls to the wall, all gas, no brakes on offense. And that is not Tressel Ball, but that is the lane he runs best in offensively. Does that hurt the defense? Yes, it
It
does.
could.
It
Yeah, you're not
does.
getting big long drives that.
Scoring too quickly, right? You know, um, turnovers, higher percentage of creating of having
Sure.
bad turnovers, negative plays because of that, putting your defense in bad situations. But this defense was built for that in a lot of ways. And even though they kind of sped the game up by slowing down the offense and huddling and doing some things of that nature this year that kind of maybe was not necessarily in his comfort zone, it did aid the defense. And when you have a generational defense, which is absolutely what we had, I could understand why at times it appeared Ryan Day was trying to play Tressel Ball.
Right. Exactly. And I'll
So
tell you,
so
Eric.
it's this push and pull. It's this give and take that he has as a head coach on, do I do what I'm comfortable with versus do I do what's best for the team?
And this is the thing, Eric. And I just want to kind of leave people with this a little bit. This thought: Ryan Day, when he coaches Ryan Day football, is the best coach in the country.
He's one of the best offensive coaches in the country,
When
hands
Ryan
down.
when Ryan Day coaches his game, one of the, if not the best coach in the country. When Ryan Day tries to play Tressel Ball, when Ryan Day tries to be Urban Meyer, he's uncomfortable, and honestly, he's average. So Ryan Day just needs to embrace who he is, because if he does that, the sky is the limit for him and for this program. You know, when we first started, before the season started, before all the Ryan Day hate started, with myself included, if you remember, what did I say before last season? What did I predict for Ryan Day? After the retirement of Nick Saban, I said this is the beginning of a new dynasty.
Yeah, you said there's the potential for Ryan Day to
I
create a new
had
dynasty.
that much confidence in Ryan Day when Ryan Day coaches Ryan Day football. My advice to Coach Day: be comfortable in who you are, live and die with who you are. Because when you play your brand of football, you can beat any team in the nation.
So, do you think, because there's another question with this that I've been contemplating about this, and that is this: if you play Ryan Day style ball, which is all gas, no brakes, put the defense in bad situations, do you think the potential of a Purdue
It
game
does.
or
You're going to
because
run into the
remember,
problems that Urban had when you do that. You're occasionally going to trip up.
well, Ryan Day was the offensive coordinator that night.
Yes,
Did
you're going to
did
trip
you
up from time to time.
that was that is still to this day a record-setting night, I believe. I believe Dwayne Haskins owns.
70 passes that night, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I
Or
also think it
close
was
to
the
it.
most passing yards in school history.
It was for a
I don't
single
know if it
game.
still
Yes.
is. It might not be. I don't know if CJ
CJ
broke
may have
that during the
got it,
Rose
but
Bowl, maybe. I don't know. I
maybe.
have to look it
But
up. But
I'll
but
tell you,
point being is he hasn't had any of those nights as a head coach. Not one.
The more I've thought about it, Eric, the more I go back to something, and God, I hate when I have to do this, but I have to give you a little bit of credit for knowing this.
Why do you hate that?
I just hate giving you credit, Eric.
Why? I mean, I give myself credit all the time, Chris.
Yes. But you have to understand, I'm of the philosophy that I'm always right, I'm never wrong, and if you don't believe me, just ask, I'll tell you.
Oh, okay.
But Eric, Ryan Day was learning to be a head coach.
Yeah.
It's taken him 6 years to learn to be a head coach. It's taken him a lot of trial and error. It's taken him some tumultuous times. It's taken him some bad beats to learn how to be a head coach. I feel like during that playoff run, he finally learned to embrace himself. He learned to embrace who he is. He learned to understand how to use his coordinators. And I think that that playoff run could be the turning point for his career.
Do you think he, because of what happened with a handful of, and I won't call them fans, I think they were probably people who
Ignorant
had,
psychotics.
they were people who had massive bets on the Michigan game who lost their shorts on those bets who made those threats. If you, that's what I've heard. Um,
Yeah.
do you think that that caused him to say, you know what? And then people like you and me being a little bit more critical of him publicly. Do you think he said, you know what? Screw it. I ain't gonna play for you anyways. Do you think he cared too much about what the fans thought before
I
that?
think at times that could have been a factor.
And now it was like, I got my family, I have my players, that's all that matters. You know, he pretty much said that.
Can I tell you, just to touch on what you're saying, Harry Miller credits Ryan Day for saving his life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you right now, Ryan Day, I think can credit Jack Sawyer for saving his career.
Interesting.
Jack Sawyer has been the most outspoken supporter, even when he was. We don't know what happened in that players only meeting,
Right.
but up to and following that meeting, Jack Sawyer has been Ryan Day's most outspoken supporter. And you saw that in their raw emotional reactions to these wins through the playoffs.
You know who else have been? I've been thinking about this too. The former players who didn't even play for him.
Yes,
You know,
Get Jonathan on here. Jonathan
Jonathan
Wells,
Wells, Bobby Carpenter,
Bobby. Yeah,
Ryan Miller. Jonathan Wells played for both Cooper and Tressel. Ryan played for Cooper. Bobby
Ryan. I thought was
Carpenter
going to
played.
slap us around that day in the office.
Yeah, Bobby Bobby Carpenter played for Tressel, and these are three people who we've talked to or have listened to in Bobby Carpenter's case, who have all been uber supportive of Ryan Day even after suffering that L to Michigan.
But
All
you know what
three of
else?
them.
You look at Bobby. You look at, and not so much Bobby, but more so Jonathan and Ryan. They've been there.
Yeah,
They've been
they've
there.
taken that
They've
L.
suffered that L.
Yeah.
They understand the pain and the heartbreak that goes with that. They've been through the criticism. Those guys know the position he was in, and they showed their support for him because of that. I think. Well, not just because of that, but I think that's a large part of why they were so passionate in their support.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me that we've gone full circle with, and it was, when do you think we started talking about, I feel like it was April or May that it dawned on you and I that Jim Tressel was hanging around the program a lot. And cuz I remember
I
citing
think it was at the spring game because he was at the spring game that year,
I
last year.
remember citing the Buckeye Cruise for Cancer, the spring game. There was a golf outing, and I said, Chris, I think he's his new mentor. And
Him, and we've seen Maurice around a lot.
that has been confirmed many times over by multiple people that that is true. Um, we came to that conclusion About 10, let's call it 9 months ago.
Yeah.
And here we are sitting in the end of January following a national championship. And here we're talking about the fact that even though Tressel is Ryan Day's mentor now,
Ryan
Ryan
Day is
Day,
not meant to play Tressel Ball.
right? Ryan Day's kind of finding his own footing. And I think Tressel would probably tell you that's fine.
And
He,
maybe that's what Tressel was there to do, was to help guide him towards finding himself and his niche.
yeah, yeah, his own footing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Incredible conversation, Chris. This is something no doubt we will probably off air talk much more about, but it was
Yeah.
cool to have this recorded conversation about it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for watching, everybody. As always, make sure that you hit that thumbs up, like what our content is. Go in. If you like what you see, subscribe. Be a member of our channel. And if you want to become an official member, it's only $3.99 a month. You get access to a lot of great content, including right now, Eric, our recruiting videos, which we are in the midst of. We just dropped our third one. And we are approaching recruiting in a way that no other outlet is doing it. And I'm telling you, the Buckeye fans are going to love the way we are approaching the recruiting. So $3.99 a month, you get that. You get a members only T-shirt after you've been a member for a month, and hey, free shipping on anything from our store, which has included a lot of great merchandise, some which has just been recently added. So again, thank you for watching. As always, OH,
IO.
go Bucks.